even as we also try to shrink the amount of territory that they control to defeat their narrative. Ultimately, to reclaim territory from them is going to require, however, an ending of the Syrian civil war.
President Obama earlier today at the G20 summit in Turkey telling reporters that retaking territory claimed by ISIS is something that really cannot be done until the end of the civil war in Syria. Our commander-in-chief also said that a U.S. ground presence would be a mistake. You see the way we covered it at our parent website, Newsmax.com. Let's talk now with two gentlemen who know whereof they speak. First, from Newsmax Washington, former CIA analyst and the vice president of the Center for Security Policy, Fred Fleitz. And joining us via Skype, also from the nation's capital, retired U.S. Army Colonel Patrick Murray. Patrick is the author of the book, Government is the Problem. Gentlemen, we thank you for your time here on Newsmax Prime. Fred, first to you. Friday night, is that at long last a wake-up call for France?
Indeed it is, J.D. What we saw here was an act of war by a terrorist army. That's the way President Hollande put it. He said that France is at war with radical Islam. He took some aggressive steps over the last 24 hours. There were over 168 airstrikes. There were raids of locations across France. He's thinking of stripping the citizenship of dual citizens and throwing suspected terrorists out of the country. That's what Hollande has to do. That's decisive leadership.
Patrick, of course, we're also hearing that France was warned about these attacks. And there's a larger question here I think a lot of people have, Patrick. It's this. The Charlie Hebdo attacks came way back in January. Why didn't France have a more aggressive posture in the wake of that warning?
Well, J.D., they had some non-disclosed warnings, and it was tough for them to, I think, respond to that. And I think the bigger question is what's happening here in the United States when you have the FBI Director, James Comey, talk about the fact that we have active ISIS investigations in all 50 states, over 900 active right now. And listen, the enemy gets a vote, and the enemy has told us, ISIS has told us, they are coming to the United States, and I applaud how well the FBI is doing, but it's a tough road to hoe, and I think that there's a comment here that relates to the fact that would we or should we take Syrian refugees in right now, given this situation?
Well, not only the Syrian refugee question that we're going to explore throughout the program, but Fred, I just have to ask you, ISIS puts out a video today. I didn't hear a single question asked to the president at the G20 summit about that, but the ISIS video threatening Washington, D.C., do you concur with Patrick that we're now in the crosshairs?
Oh, I definitely think we are in the crosshairs. It's interesting to see this discussion over the last 48 hours. Are we sure ISIS ran this attack, or was it simply individuals inspired by ISIS? You know what, J.D., that's a distinction without a difference. ISIS wants to attack the West with groups it controls and with groups it inspires through its propaganda. And you can be darn sure ISIS is trying to inspire jihadist terrorists in the United States to conduct exactly the same attacks here.
And we get this warning out of Europe and also this kind of weird cooperation among terrorists across national borders. Belgium, of course, terrorists there linked to Charlie Hebdo, the train attacks, and indeed the horrific events in Paris on Friday. Patrick, in your opinion, has Belgium become safe haven and a breeding ground for radical Islamists?
Well, it's not just Belgium, J.D. We don't know where else they are, and whether it's Germany, obviously France, and yes, Belgium. That's where the genesis of this happened, and so they are throughout Europe. I believe that's definitely the case. And Fred's right, and he makes a good point about the fact that whether it is ISIS per se or it is the so-called lone wolf attacks. ISIS, these guys are Svengalis when it comes to social networking, and that's how they do their recruiting, and that's how they inspire people to conduct these attacks, and the end result is the same as we just saw in Paris Friday night.
Fred, final 30 seconds to you. I touched on it earlier. France was warned a couple of times, we understand. Does this rank as an intelligence failure?
It is an intelligence failure, but these attacks are very hard to stop. There's a large Muslim population in Paris, and unlike the United States, all these terrorists have to do is to cross European borders somewhere to the east and work their way across the continents because of the open borders. So France has a much more serious security problem than we do. It was an intelligence failure, and that has to be studied so this doesn't happen again.
And we also need to learn about open borders. Fred Fleitz and Patrick Murray, we thank you both. Patrick's book, again, is entitled Government is the Problem. You got some comments for us? We'd love to hear from you. Send your comments to me at newsmaxtv.com/comments. Back with Tom DeLay right after this.